Gonna get started now. And one, and two. What's up, gamers? My name is Cody, and welcome to part 2 of my Working with Voice Actors series here on DevTalk. Voice acting is not strictly required to make a visual novel, but having it adds a layer of depth and polish that can help your game stand out from the rest of the crowd. Giving it the drip, as it were. The goal of this series is to get you familiar with that process, and even if you aren't looking to add voice acting quite yet, hopefully it puts you, as director of a team, into the mindset of working better with others and making their jobs as easy as possible. So who am I and why should you care? Great questions! First off, I'm Cody. We've been over that. Hello! I run a small YouTube channel called Maho Studio. We did RPG Maker content for about 4 years, including my comedy isekai series Defeat the Darkness, filmed entirely in RPG Maker, for which I handled casting and directing, as well as hosting a 50-plus episode run of game design podcasts called the RPG Maker General Podcast, later called Maho Indie Spotlight. More recently, I voiced Jack in Last Meal at Cafe Mori, which placed second overall in the judging for the 2020 Spooktober Jam, and for my work as Jack, I won Best Monster Voice Performance in Spooktober Jam. For this year's Winter Jam, I was voice director for How We Show Love, which is another thoughtful existential game where I once again worked with my Cafe Mori compatriot Coda, who once again did an amazing job with her voice work. You'll be hearing more about this game when I do the directing talk next week. Over the last 8 years, I've become very accustomed to working alongside talented people on non-profit projects, both leading and following, both long-term and short-term. Now, last time on Dragon Ball Z, after entering the Hyperbolic Time Chamber slideshow, you learned how to determine the proper amount of voice acting for your game, and organize your script in a professional manner that will make it easy for your talent to read. Now, the search begins for those exquisite voices that will bring your characters to life. Alright, casting. There are 2 types of casting: scouting and casting calls. We'll cover scouting first, it's very short. Scouting is this: you already know a voice actor who would fit the role, you ask them, and they accept, and you're done. You can also do scouting by listening to demo reels. But where would you find these reels? Ooh, I have a picture for this. I did a search in this server, in Jam Recruitment, from April 1st to Thursday, May 12th. 37 results, and over 24 of those results are in fact voice actors. All 24 plus of these people are in this server. They know how game jams work, and are willing to do a small amount of free labor on a tight deadline for the right person and the right game. All you have to do is listen to their reel and give them a chance. In the year of our Lord 2022, the general quality of demo reels has become so good as to be indistinguishable. It's no longer enough to be the only kid on your block who set up a decent booth and isn't stuck with a cheap USB microphone. So what can an actor's demo reel really tell you? Well, what they sound like for one, but a couple other things. 1. Microphone quality is still important. Some demo reels offer a snippet of room tone to establish that their setup is clean enough that it doesn't produce any static or noise in their recordings, which is just them being silent for a couple seconds like this. You generally don't need them to provide room tone, though it's nice to have. If you don't hear any buzzing or static when they're speaking, then they're usually fine. Mostly, be aware of demo reels where the music or sound effects are so loud that they may be attempting to mask a low-quality microphone setup. Number 2, mic technique. Are they popping their P's and sending puffs of air into the microphone? Are they being too loud, thereby peaking their microphone and causing distortion? Are they too close or too far away from their mic? Proximity effect drastically changes the bass response of a microphone depending on distance. Someone who's too close to the microphone sounds like they're speaking directly into your ear, like one of those ASMR people. Someone who's too far away is literally going to sound like they're too far away. Pretty simple. Number 3, how comfortable are they with being loud? Does their setup allow them to cry or scream without bugging their neighbors? These may not be necessary for your casual romance VN, but if your game goes up to 11, then prioritize demo reels where the actor demonstrates their willingness to be loud and energetic. You already know they're cool with it, and it won't be an issue later. If you hear a demo reel that you like, now's your opportunity to scout them. You can ask the voice actor to audition for the role, or you can offer them the role outright. Both are fine. The fact that you took the time to listen to their reel and to make that connection with them is what's truly important. It will make someone's day. On the subject of auditions, we'll move into casting calls now. You've probably already seen your fair share of casting calls either somewhere here on Discord or on an outside resource like Twitter or Casting Call Club. Some of them have likely looked more professional than others. In order to attract the best talent, a good audition thread offers a rich amount of detail both for the characters to be cast and for the structure of the casting call itself. If all you put down is that you're looking to dub all of Naruto, nobody's going to take you seriously. Believe it. Even in the modern day, with the advent of social media, both sides have to extrapolate a large amount of information about each other from a small amount of input. This is your first impression. Appear professional and trustworthy, i.e. not cringe. The more detail you provide about the game, the roles available, and your strategy, the less cringe you appear. First thing, is your project paid or unpaid? If you're watching this for Otome Jam, likely unpaid. We won't get into the messy politics of money today. Your project is unpaid. That means you are asking random strangers for a favor. That means the requests will be reasonable, the line counts will be small, and the deadlines will be as generous as you can get away with in a game jam. We will talk about deadlines later. What is your project? This is where you throw down your elevator pitch for your game. Why would people want to play it? Obviously, you can't promise a ton of reach with a game jam game, but you can offer an interesting premise and a fun way to pad their resume. Now, let's prepare your Google document for when you pitch this to Twitter, Discord, etc. Who are your characters? First, name, obviously. Doesn't need explaining, although you may need to explain how to pronounce it. Do your best to be phonetic. There's no perfect way to do this. Do you know the International Phonetic Alphabet? Do you recognize any of this stuff? No, and neither does anybody else. Just do your best. Here's a fun local example. These are 3 real cities in the state of Washington, where I live. Take a look at their names. How do you think they're pronounced? Go ahead, I'll wait. The first one is squim. For this one, I spelled it phonetically. This will largely be how you solve the pronunciation problem. The second one is pronounced Puyallup. This is a combination of 2 separate words and is also useful. The third one is pronounced Sammamish. See, I moved that second M over next to the third one. While objectively true, this very subtle change could go unnoticed by someone reading my document, and could be misinterpreted as, well, that dumbass Cody spelled it wrong, and now I still don't know how to pronounce Sammamish. The more you know. If you're still unsure if people will pronounce the name correctly, you can include a short recording of how to say it. Finally, this top line is also where you would place the age and gender of a character if you deem them important for your story. Next up, picture. Pictures are easy to embed practically anywhere these days, and they give the greatest amount of information in the smallest amount of time. Always include a picture for major character roles. Blurb. Who is the character? Tell us about them in 1 or 2 sentences. If you're having trouble simplifying your character's backstory, then I highly suggest looking at instruction manuals for older games. They do a masterful job of establishing a character and building future intrigue in a very small space. Your goal is not to tell them everything. Yet, your goal is to make them intrigued enough to audition. Do you imagine this character sounding like a certain actor from an anime or video game? This is where you'd put any references for that, be they scenes from an anime, cutscene, movie, etc. Now, keep in mind, you're not getting Lucy Christian to audition for your shoujo dating sim protagonist, so you're free to set this preference, but try to keep an open mind when auditions begin rolling in. Allow people to surprise you. With all of these in place, potential actors have a strong idea of who this character should be. You've earned their trust. You've answered their important questions. Now, with their audition lines alone, How can you get them to answer yours? Audition lines are your first true glimpse into how the actors perceive your character, and how the public will perceive them in turn. You have to extrapolate a lot of data from a small amount of audition lines, so they really have to count. You don't get many either. Most casting calls use 3 or 4 lines. Realistically, you should stick to this number. Nobody should have to recite half the Iliad just to see if they can maybe do more free work for you on your game. Also, your lines ought to express important facets of each character. These can be pulled directly from your script, or they can be made up for the audition. Yes, you are allowed to make up lines. You have a sad scene, but don't have one dynamite line to establish the sad? Make one up. If that character needs that emotion, guide your actor into it in 2 sentences or less. Respect their time, and give yourself good data to work with. You can also allow multiple takes, which is an actor submitting the same line more than once. This allows them to try the line either in different voices or playing with different aspects of voiceover like the tempo, the speed at which they say the line, as well as which word to emphasize, etc. I generally recommend allowing multiple takes for an audition and to cap it at 3 takes so the actor doesn't waste your time with 10 slightly different reads of the same line. They'll be encouraged to submit 3 very unique takes where you can properly gauge their ability to portray the character. How do they submit their work? Either as a .wav or .mp3 file. These are used everywhere, and there are few exceptions. Superior formats do exist, but their compatibility with your game engine and their audio software is questionable. WAV and MP3 are the Big Mac and Whopper of the voice acting format world. They're everywhere, everyone knows what they are, and everyone knows exactly what to expect. Speaking the same language is far more important than a slightly better burger. You may choose to restrict auditions to just MP3, just WAV, or to allow either format. How do they name their submitted files? Character name, underscore, their name, underscore, line number, underscore, take number, .mp3 or .wav. There are better ways to do this. I encourage you to find your own, but this method carries no ambiguity and no confusion. The voice actor knows how to export their audition, and you know how to read it when it arrives. You may also allow all lines and takes to be submitted as one file, so character name, underscore, their name, underscore, audition, yada yada yada. Character name first, to help you organize all the auditions you're hopefully getting. We're nearing the end of this talk, the deadline, as it were, so now we'll talk about deadlines. If you've been following my advice up to now, your script will be finished by the 3rd week. You want your public audition period to last at least 1 week. You also need time before and after the audition period to prepare your casting call and then to select your actors. So in this example, I've blocked out 2 weeks. Most of your auditions will come in the final 24 hours when you make your last chance announcement on Twitter, but you want to allow a week for people to absorb the casting call and prepare if they need to. How long will they have to record the lines after being cast? Hopefully 2 weeks. If you've been following the advice up to now, the script is finalized in week 3, casting opened shortly afterwards, ran midway into week 5, and all lines would be submitted by the middle or end of week 7, which gives you a week and a half to implement the lines, handle retakes, etc. All of this deadline info should be in your casting call. Again, this timeline is a suggestion to give both you and your actors the greatest amount of time possible to get everything done by the end of Otome Jam. And the jam itself is an artificial deadline. Running late on the voice acting? That'll just be part of the 1.1 update after the jam ends. Simple. Now that you have your casting call and your schedule, and you appear to the public like the most professional indie dev who ever lived, hopefully this has caused you to be drowning in auditions. Once you've selected your voice actors, you must now direct them to make the best use of their talent and make your story into the best version of itself that it can possibly be. And I look forward to next week when we formally go over that process. Thank you. I'd also like to briefly shout out 123 Nami K for proofreading this script, as well as last week's script, to ensure that they make sense to their target audience. It helps to have an indie dev look at a guide for indie devs. Thanks, Nami. And I will be opening it to questions now. I cannot answer this even as another person lives here in Washington. Oh, that's great. Oh. I love these answers. And yes, Lightmaker, I saw your earlier question. This casting call information should apply almost generally. Almost generally. Because a lot of this you're going to have to do no matter what type of game you're making. You're going to have to figure out who your characters are. You're going to have to set up good audition lines. You have to set deadlines and a schedule, etc., etc. Do you have a video explaining how you can use Excel to import voice lines? It was just something I heard, but IDK if that's off topic. Yeah, so Jen Yan, the actual engineering side is completely outside of my range of expertise. Someone knows how. They are not in Dev Talk. Question: if we are only auditioning for certain roles for Otome Jam content, would it be best we cast only for those roles then get the rest of the roles later on? That sounds like yes. That sounds like yes, because the talk I did last week was all about getting everything ready. So if you're not ready for the voice actors, don't cast them. Voice actors really like to just walk in, do their job, and be done with it. Like, they view it very professionally. So when you cast somebody, you want the script ready, in hand, and finalized so they can come in, bang it out, thank you for doing it, everyone retweets each other, they move on with their lives. Yeah, absolutely. Question: would it be rude to afterward ask if the people you worked with would want to join a more proper and permanent team? Like if we want to make a studio like Team Cherry or Yacht Club Games. The worst thing that would happen is that they say no. That's the worst that would happen. I would say that someone with the typical reach that people in Dev Talk have, they have to view you professionally if they're going to consider being on a roster. And also, like, legitimacy is important, but also if you end up with money later, like money talks. This entire talk is set up as someone who doesn't have money, so I'm trying to set people up to appear legitimate and to make people's jobs easy. But if you got money, you can get away with damn near anything. So yeah, if you tell them that I'm building a roster of paid actors, then your work's entirely done. But otherwise, yeah, you got to be like, hey, we're making this, here is our vision, here are our goals, here's, some other stuff we got set up. And if you are offering interesting products and interesting ways for them to flex their voice acting muscle, then yeah, absolutely ask and see if you can keep good people around. I know rates will fluctuate from project to project, but is there a standard rate? Yes, there is a standard rate. Voice Acting Club is like the big Discord for voice acting online. Kind of goes without saying, but I'm in the Discord right now. I'm gonna try and pull up the rate guide that they have. Ah, shoot, there's way too much here. Anyway, they have an indie rate guide, and it tells you how much you should pay per hour or per word or per line. And generally, indie rates are about half of what industry rates are. You can also talk with the voice actors and say, hey, I've got this amazing idea. It wouldn't take too long. Again, this is where you use your professionalism and your ability to work with others easily. And you say, look, it's going to be a really easy job and a really fun job. And that's how you get some of those people on board. Yeah, one of my favorite stories about this is actually the Muppet Show, which happened in like the late 70s, early 80s. The Muppet Show was being filmed in England. So it was very hard for them to get special guests. So what they did was they would say, hey, we know that you are a famous, singer, comedian, whatever, but we want you on the show. We can't offer much money, and you're going to be working with puppets. But, do you enjoy singing? Did you want to tell jokes? Did you want to dance? Did you want to act in a scene? Like, they were very accommodating to their guest stars because they knew they couldn't offer them money, but instead they offered them something fun to do by flying halfway across the globe to do a puppet show. So that's kind of the mindset you have to have is, I'm running a puppet show. How do I convince these really cool people to come and be a guest on my puppet show? Any other questions? While I'm waiting for more questions, I'll talk about Rev Share. So revenue share is where people get, say, a stake in the game. This happens with Hollywood too, where the highest paid actors will usually get a percentage of the gross sales. So if someone's in a movie that makes $100 million and they get 2% of the gross, that means they get $2 million as a bonus. Rev Share generally isn't used at the lowest level of indie dev because it's hard to guarantee sales and it's hard to guarantee income. It's more likely that people will accept, $75 an hour and have that guaranteed $75 than risk not getting anything on the potential chance that you might just happen to blow up later. This also happens with musicians and touring, where you have the actual band where they share the costs and the risks, but they're like, oh shoot, we're heading to Miami and we need a keyboardist. They'll find a local keyboardist in Miami, they'll pay him to do a couple gigs in that area, and that way that gig artist gets a guaranteed payout and doesn't have to worry about the overall success or failure of the band's tour. That's generally less risky than doing Rev Share. All right, thank you all so much for coming. I hope to see you at this time next week for the directing talk. Until then, what's up, gamers? I'm out.